You're listening to the Gemhammer and Sons podcast, the only podcast where Connor and Joe discuss how to make your games more better. Roll initiative.
Hey, welcome back. It's Connor and Joe.
You know, I just realized there are probably people who are like binge listening to this.
Yeah?
We started the first podcast saying, oh, you're probably listening to this because we got super famous and now you want to see how it all started.
Yeah.
The idea of people in like 20 years listening to this sort of in a row is really interesting to me. And I never realized it. Like oh, hey, welcome back.
Do you ever think about, like, in the future, or I guess even, like, nowadays, where, like, you could go and, like, listen to old episodes of Howard Stern, like, in order, and how weird that must be? I imagine it's very much the same thing.
Right, I know that I got on the
For
podcast
you future
train.
People, Howard Stern was a radio show host.
Radio is a technology where information goes through the air.
Almost like Wi-Fi, like a low-tech Wi-Fi.
It's like one thing at a time podcasting, you wonderful future internet people.
Assuming that internet exists in the future.
Oh yeah, the internet was like a big deal for us. As people are going to be listening to this as though like how people nowadays look at cuneiform plates.
Yeah,
They're
absolutely.
like, what on earth is an internet?
When they have the quantum computers and everything,
Right,
just
just
like
in their
entanglement.
brain,
yeah,
and you just
exactly.
sort of
and they have
know
just
everything.
complete access to all the information in the universe at all times, and they're like, "What the fuck are these guys even talking about?"
So, as always, we're going to start with reactions. First thing, I want to apologize. The podcast episode 2,
Electric Boogaloo.
Electric Boogaloo, was in fact uploaded twice because there was an editing issue. I missed about 5 minutes of a conversation we were having because I was frantically trying to get it out by Vermont Comic Con so that I could give away some free t-shirts.
But that's behind us, and now we're on to episode 3, Revenge of the Sith.
I thought we decided Return of the King.
Did we decide Return of the King?
I don't know. So we also had some listener feedback.
That's right. Our buddy Johnny was listening to it, and he had to say that it was very entertaining and educational. He plays D&D with us on Monday nights. And Dom from Wicked Good Gaming, another guy that we play with, he had this to say about the first podcast, and I can't believe I closed it. I had it like all ready. He was very mad that I blanked on the name of his dwarf from that like one-shot adventure we talked about in the first podcast. His name was Varian Ironheart.
Varian Ironheart.
Varian Ironheart.
And
he said, and I quote, "And I can't believe you forgot him. I'm heartbroken after all we've been through."
You could say he's iron heartbroken.
You could say that he's Ironheart broken.
We also got our first iTunes review
That's right. We got our first iTunes review
from the great United States of America.
That's right.
Someone who evidently saw us at the con, at Vermont Comic Con, and then listened to us. Evidently only heard the first episode because they didn't come back and say, hey, where's my free thing? Or maybe they just didn't come back the second day of the con.
Very possible.
Very possible. That's actually a really good segue into Vermont.
That's right. We've been talking about Vermont. We went to Vermont Comic Con in Burlington, New Hampshire.
Nope.
Burlington, Vermont.
Whoa, man. You told me before we recorded that you were tired, but Vermont Comic Con in Burlington, Connecticut.
In Burlington, Massachusetts. We're going to San Diego Comic Con in San Diego, Cincinnati, Mexico.
Yes, Vermont Comic Con was in Burlington, Vermont.
Burlington. I don't know why I did it. I haven't been feeling too well today, so I'm a little tired. I took some NyQuil because we didn't have DayQuil, which I immediately regret after doing it. So I'm not at my best, but probably going to be at my funniest.
Yeah, you just keep making those con checks, bro.
Yep.
As long as you can power through this is going to be some great radio.
What's a radio?
So we were set up with all the other exhibitors. We had a nice, very traditional comic book shop with white paper boxes next to us.
That's right, and we posted pictures of the table and all that stuff. And,
yeah, I will.
Facebook.
I will link to those in the show notes.
Fantastic.
And the jerky guys behind us. You
Yep,
probably
the jerky
saw
guys were
that.
great. You definitely saw the picture of the Jerky Hut behind us because their
There's
banner.
actually a comment or two about. I didn't know.
right.
I didn't even know you
there was
guys
an
had
ice-
jerky.
Yeah, people like. You know those like really bad jokes that's like you're tired of hearing, and then people follow them up with, and I bet you've heard that a million times today. Yeah, that doesn't make it any better. The fact that you've said so, everyone kept coming up to us and be like, "Oh, do you guys sell jerky?" No, I'm just kidding. That man, that must suck though, having the jerky sign right above your heads. All right? You must say that a million times a day. Yes, we did.
Well, actually, the good news is a lot of people did come by legitimately looking for jerky because wonderful internet people. If you've never been to a convention that had Jerky Hut, you got to start demanding that they come.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. Like, at first it was like, oh man, there's like a Jerky Hut sign above our heads, and that sucks. But you know what? They gave us like free jerky.
Wait, not only did they give us free jerky,
and it's amazing.
It's the best jerky I've had in my life.
As someone who, as a result of some weird dietary issues, pretty much eats jerky for most meals of his life, I got to tell you that's the best jerky I've ever had.
So that is a non-sponsored plug for Jerky Hut, because they were so awesome to us being behind us. And their sign really helped. People were like, hey, we heard about the great jerky. They were like, we don't have that, but we have Dex. Do you play D&D?
Do you have dice? Do you want dice?
We've got dice. Other cool people who were there, the 501st out of New England, and also some from Montreal were there, which was awesome.
It was very awesome. I got written up by the 501st for both.
Well,
for
there might be some wonderful internet people who don't know the 501st.
Oh, so the 501st is a charity fan organization. They have movie quality Stormtrooper and Imperial uniforms and costumes. And
so there were a couple guys in Imperial officers' uniforms. One of the guys had the Endor Imperial officer uniform.
And one of them had the pilot's outfit.
Yeah, tons of stormtroopers, a TIE pilot.
Yep.
A Royal Guard.
There was a Royal Guard. The Royal Imperial Guard, which is a little weird because where's the Emperor, man? You don't get to take a day trip and leave the Emperor behind.
Maybe it's like the King's Guard from Game of Thrones, where they do. Maybe they can be dispatched.
I doubt it. That's what he's got Vader for, and that's what Vader has the 501st for. Which brings us back to what we were talking about.
Oh yes, the 501st, named after sort of the Stormtrooper Legion that was like Darth Vader's
fist.
They were called Vader's Fist. They were his personal sort of. Vader needs these people killed.
Send Vader's fist to go fist the enemy into submission.
We got a clean tag, bro. Yeah, so hanging out with Vader's Fist was awesome.
Yep. They saw that we had dice and that we were offering
free t-shirts to people who could get the die with our Gemhammer logo on it.
So some of you on our Instagram probably have seen the large black and blue dice that we have. It's a large wooden dice that's laced together. Don't ask why it's laced together. Yeah, so we have this giant D20 dice made of wood and laced up on the sides that looks kind of neat. And the top where the 20 would be is our logo, and it's actually like a latch that opens up, and inside it is filled with hundreds of dice. And there are, for every 50 dice, I believe there's one Gemhammer dice.
Yep.
With our logo on it, and it's blue and black and a little silver in there.
A gorgeous die, frankly.
Yep. If you dig in and you pull out a dice, well, you pay $1, you get a dice, and that dice is yours to keep. But if you get the one with our logo on it, you get a free Cure Light Wounds t-shirt.
Yeah.
And that was a hit. I think that really saved us at the con.
Are you saying the Cure Light Wounds t-shirt available now at gemhammer.spreadshirt.com?
That's correct. The very same.
That Cure Wounds Light tastes great, less healing.
That's right. See, I was same healing, 1d8 the fat.
Yeah, but beer doesn't have fat.
That's but it's more like a Diet Coke reference.
Is it? Okay.
It's really hard to say, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean,
I always imagine it as a beer.
They're both in the same ballpark, though.
Because when I was doing the Cure Wounds Light ad last week, I was literally drinking beer while doing it. So maybe
light is more like a beer thing. I guess that makes a lot more sense.
Who knows? We should. You know how the first Diet Cola was Tab? We should just have a brand new product with just a one letter Zap, and we'll just sell that T-shirt, and no one will understand it, and we will send none of them. Yeah, what is that? A Zap Brannigan joke? Is that a? I thought they were fantasy, not sci-fi.
Sci-fi is fantasy.
We're not having this conversation yet. Man, we play the Game of Thrones role-playing game. There will be time for science fiction is fantasy. That conversation.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. Dragon Riders of Pern, though, is the quintessential sci-fi is fantasy book. You should check those out.
Dragon Riders of Pern?
Dragon Riders of Pern. You should check that out. I'll let you borrow it.
Excellent. And we will link to something somewhere about that in the show notes.
Anne McCaffrey.
Yeah.
She's from Cambridge.
Really?
Yep.
Cambridge,
Massachusetts.
Vermont? Sorry, bro.
I could talk about every goofy thing you do. That's wrong.
But hey, man, I was apologizing for messing up the podcast last week, and you just let it fly by. You had your chance, bro. You had your chance.
Well, let's see what we can do.
Also, at VTCC, we ran a beginner's game.
That's right. We did have a beginner's game.
Yeah, we had 8 people who had 7 of whom had never played before. One of whom was sort of an old hat just looking to play.
Mm-hmm.
and they all had a great time. We had Bob the Barbarian, and if you had never played D&D before, it's a little hard to explain what an elven wizard is, or like a dwarven cleric. Even that elf doesn't mean Keebler elf making cookies, tiny guy. So you do what everyone always does and resort to Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, a dwarf, you think Gimli, right? An elf, think Legolas. So I believe we had 2 elven wizards, Legatus and Legolan were the 2
Wow.
elven wizards.
They're reaching deep.
They were.
You mean there weren't 3 drow at the table? Drizzt, Drizzt, and Drizzt?
I have to imagine if you know who Drizzt is, you at least know what D&D is. So we had a real good time with all 8 of the people who came down. They ended up walking away with some dice. They ended up walking home with one of those gorgeous win you a free t-shirt Gemhammer die.
That's right.
Did not give them a free t-shirt. They got the free die though.
That's right. And Victory Condition Gaming and Gamers Grotto were good enough to supply us with some free stuff to give away.
Yeah, and we'll definitely link to them in the show notes too, because they were awesome.
True story.
It was funny. I had all my dice, right? And I have all these purple dice because it's easier for me as a DM. If I need to lend someone dice, just make sure I get the purple ones back and everyone will be good. And I literally dumped out my big bag of dice, and I have all the weird ones you got me.
Yep.
Like the D3 and the D5 and the D7.
And the D30.
You're right, the D30. And I'm pushing those to the side, and I'm trying to build sets for these guys. And then Doug from Victory Condition came by with the dice that I think he may have gotten from Gamers Grotto. Mm-hmm. I actually don't know where those dice came from, but both of them were involved in that process, so good on them. And then handed out these dice to people, to all the players, these sets for themselves, after I had already, I was halfway through finding the right purple dice for them.
And that's my fault, because he had told me that he had sets of dice for everyone, and I was supposed to relay that to you, and I just didn't.
Yeah, I mean, it was a busy weekend. And I had fun, met a lot of gamers, met a lot of people who are fairly local. We're here north of Boston.
Mm-hmm. I had a lot of fun. There were a lot of people from the Boston area that were there.
Right, which shocked me, because people from Boston generally don't leave Boston.
Right. And then also, why are they going to drive 3 hours out of their way to go to Comic-Con when there's, there was one last week.
Right.
In
around
Boston.
Here.
Right around here.
Right. We had a great time. Loved meeting all of you wonderful internet people who came by. Nobody decided to bankrupt us by saying they wanted free stuff. I assume that's because you're nice.
The next con that we do, if you guys come up, and whichever con that is, we'll carry it over. If someone comes up to us at the very next con that we do, we'll say, yeah, man.
Yeah, and we'll put that out on the podcast when we talk about what we're doing. So yes, we will. We'll carry that through to cons until we start doing it, and it starts losing us tons and tons of money.
And then we're gonna stop.
Or alternatively, we could continue.
Or we could just have free stuff to give away.
Ooh, perhaps. But that will be a business decision we make off the air, and when you're not drugged up on NyQuil. This is not
Motussin.
This is not a sponsored podcast by NyQuil, for the record.
Or Robitussin.
Or Robitussin, really, any Tussins. So, do a quick ad and then come back for Tales from the Table, because we just started our new campaign.
That's right.
So, listen to these wonderful words from our sponsors. They are certainly almost not actual sponsors. And we'll come back with Tales from the Table.
Hey, Drunk Stag Battler here. Are you and your companions going on a perilous journey of dire consequence? Is your princess or priestess currently the hostage of a dastardly troop of villains unknown? Is your kingdom or fortress besieged by a legion of the undead? Is this situation like as or applicable to your collective problems? You deserve professional adventure and experience the use can trust. I'm Drunk Stag Battler of Stag Battler and Sons Professional Adventure and Services Incorporated, and I will fight for you. I can be reached anytime via my cellular crystal ball. Just dial me at 782-422-88537.
Swords, sorcery, role-playing, math. It's time for Tales from the Table. Thank you to our wonderful sponsors. Sponsor probably only had the one ad there.
Probably just the one.
Right. I'm not going to make up 2 different fictional companies just to have multiple ads before Tales from the Table. So we started off on our new campaign. We talked about Session 0 2 weeks ago.
That's right.
And we just played the first campaign, the first adventure in that campaign yesterday.
That's right. We didn't finish it, but we'll just continue on next week.
Right. I mean,
keep on rolling.
It would be weird if we finished the entire campaign.
The first adventure.
Okay. But I mean, we'll keep playing.
Absolutely.
So what had happened was Wall the Wise put together his crack team, and we're going to go out and
Crack team.
top men. And
belongs in a museum.
it was very interesting, those of us talking, we did that sort of traditional, let's introduce each other to everybody kind of thing. And there's 3 of us were in it for gold, and 3 of us were in it just for adventure. And it was that's easy for you as a DM to come up with an adventure hook now.
Yeah.
Hey,
you're going on an adventure that pays you gold. Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah, I'm sold. Where do I sign up? Interestingly, we were going to sign up on a very large sort of bridge because we're moving on to sort of an Eberron-y theme.
That's right.
In the time we've moved past in between Westeros and Middle Earth.
That's right.
And moved more towards the higher level of technology, much more magic in the world. Only to find our
your new patron. The
our financier.
Yeah, he's had his head snapped off by a mysterious cloaked figure.
The cloaked figure. We gave chase. Fought on the underside of the bridge a little bit.
Yeah, that was unexpected. I did not expect you guys to leap off the bridge after him.
Well, I remember the first thing that happened was Randall Shadowstar.
Yeah,
we were calling him Sarketh, but I think he changed his name.
He changed his name right before the first session. He's like, it's not going to be Sarketh. It's going to be Randall.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, all right. Whatever you want.
Yeah. So Randall is a core, and he was the first person to jump down, but he's got a climb speed. That makes perfect sense.
Right, so he just swung under the bridge and is climbing his way underneath, no problem.
And then the next person down, because he has the thrill of adventure. Interestingly, no inspiration for this, but my bard Gregory, right off the bridge. Do you want to explain yourself before all the wonderful internet people? Why I didn't get inspiration for being so awesome?
I let you leap off the bridge and not die. You don't get to have inspiration for that.
All right, that sounds fair.
I also let you get way closer to that fight than you should have ever been, because if you recall at the beginning of that fight, you guys were a turn and a half away from getting to the manhole cover that got you under the bridge to where people were.
Yeah.
And you were just there.
Yeah. We don't use minis, so it's really easy to lose track of long distances and things of that nature.
Yeah.
And I mean, that also allows the story to be a bit more narrative, which I like. Down there, my bard shooting off crossbows, trying to sing songs, bardically inspire people. Everybody else comes in. We came really close, it seems to me, to beating the gentleman who turns out to be a warforged.
That's right. It was a warforged.
But he got away. Then the cops came in their airships.
The cops just rolled up in their airships and was get on the ground.
Big spotlights. We never got an understanding of how the spotlights worked because there's no electricity in the world yet. I don't think.
I mean,
a bunch of light cantrips all cast at once, or.
I mean, you could. I mean, what is it to have a magic light? Just a giant magic thing that makes light.
Yeah, a nice beacon.
Yeah,
a big brazier.
See, just pretend it's an electric light. Don't what is the Warforged run on? They get a nuclear reactor in their chest? What's going on there? What keeps them going? It's not like they eat. It's not like they eat.
A wizard did it.
A wizard did it. A wizard did it. They're +5 spotlights of searching.
Spotlights of illumination. So we ended up talking to the cops briefly. Turns out that the guy who was killed was in fact our patron. We went back to sort of our home bar and found his daughter, sort of half elf, half dwarf, who was raised by him. He wasn't his daughter proper, or that's the story we got. She's like, "Hey, me and my father, this was the plan. Go under sort of the new magic college that they're building and go find this artifact, this MacGuffin stone."
The MacGuffin stone. And that's going to be a big part of this adventure, is going around to the various MacGuffin stone keeps and finding all the MacGuffin stones. And if you don't know what a MacGuffin is, you should look it up. And I think you'll get that joke a lot better. You should then, and once you find out what MacGuffin is, go back and re-listen to that. And you'll laugh. Or your money back.
Yes, whatever you paid for this podcast, we will easily refund it double That's the level of commitment we have to making more better game podcasts.
Ooh.
Double your money back on this podcast.
Ooh. Up to and including. Double your money back.
We didn't even mention the...
we didn't.
When we did Vermont Comic Con, we were selling the die out of the big die, like we mentioned, and halfway through the convention, I came up with a wonderful line that the 20-sided die you pull out are guaranteed to roll a crit up to 100% of the time.
Up to and including.
Yes, it could be. It won't be.
It won't be. but it
But
could.
Yeah.
Statistically speaking, there's a D20 out there that will always roll a D20.
Yeah.
I mean, roll a 20. It's not a good statistic.
There were probably ones around. The
Yeah, you know, that one that like rolls a 20 the first time it gets rolled, and like, I don't know, gets struck by lightning and bursts in the flames or something. I don't know.
Yeah, that's... Bad things will befall that D20
Yeah.
that rolls crits every time. But back to the adventure.
Yep, back to the adventure.
So we roll up on sort of this goblin village right outside where they're building the new college.
Mm-hmm.
We started being who we are as a party.
Yeah, like, see, this was meant to be like, all right, at nightfall, we're gonna like sneak in here, we're gonna go in through the sewers, and we're gonna come up underneath, and we're gonna start like figuring this out, and we're gonna get into whatever we're doing. And instead, they're like, broad daylight, let's try and walk onto the construction site. And meanwhile, like the NPC who's like trying to like guide them through is like, guys, if we go like a mile up the river, there's like a sewer that we can get into that's gonna bring us right underneath. We don't even need to deal with these guys. And you guys are like, no, screw that. I need some like papers from the Explorers League that shows that I'm a digger, so they can like come in and be like, whoa, where's your permits? And I suppose that's a good time to talk about
Sully and Garrett.
Sully and Garrity, yeah.
Sully and Garrity came from Star Wars.
Yeah.
So in the Star Wars role-playing game, the one by Fantasy Flight, the new one that's out, Edge of the Empire, our group was tasked with stealing this giant hut statue.
Mm-hmm.
And,
The casino heist.
Right, in the casino. And the plan was broken up into two parts. Our bounty hunter and our outlaw tech were on Team A. My character, who was a mechanic, and Phil's character, the pilot, were on Team B. Team A's job was to infiltrate the casino and knock down the security. And Team B's job was to go steal this Imperial dropship that was off close. And Johnny and Rob, I have to say this right now. Rob from Wicked Good Gaming and Johnny, who were our outlaw tech and bounty hunter respectively, they had this great plan. They were going to pretend that they were HVAC technicians and they had to shut down everything.
Although what HVAC is doing in a Star Wars setting, I don't know. But evidently it worked.
Right, and they've got all these forged documents, and they're like synchronizing their watches, and everything goes according to plan. And then Dom from Wicked Good Gaming is DMing this, and he turns to me and Phil and says, "Okay, so what do you do?" And we are, Edge of the Empire is set up so that you are sort of these wanted criminals, wanted men all across. I had the death sentence on 5-star systems, right? And we just walk up like, "Hey, these are our real names, and we are wanted criminals. Can we take that dropship?" So shut down the power, which should be like just sneak behind a fence and flip a switch, was like carefully planned down to the millisecond. Go steal an Imperial dropship from Stormtroopers was like, we'll wing it.
We'll do it live.
And only Phil almost died.
Only Phil almost died. Of the two of you.
Of the two of us. So since then, anytime Rob from Wicked Good Gaming and Johnny had a Star Wars problem, they'd just be HVAC technicians with fake work orders.
Yeah.
Like, oh no, all this and you gotta take all this down here.
Just a code.
Right.
Oh, you gotta get a union guy in here to dig
Oh
all
yeah,
this
that's gonna
out.
be a lot of money there. I could do an estimate for you.
Let me ask you, who's the foreman around here? He's got some explaining to do up in here. And that was like half of the campaign.
It was great. I loved it.
So you can imagine how action-packed that adventure was.
Right, but in a very similar way,
As we're happening upon the construction of this like the College of Sorrow extension school. They're like, all right, here's the plan. We're gonna go in and pretend we're HVAC technicians, and like the NPC is like, we can walk a mile up the river, sneak underneath, and never deal with these guys.
Well, what had happened was we had this goblin village, and Doc, who is our dwarven cleric, and his son, Warforged monk Apollo, we're like haggling with this goblin merchant. I'm taking out my loot and playing a song, earning some nice dead rats.
And you earned a great number of dead rats. Those were fine. As I recall, you were going to eat like a king.
I sold them for a Talisman of Serenity.
That's right. You got a Talisman of Serenity, whatever in the hell that does.
I have advantage against being stunned.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's what I came up with because I was like on the spot, like, oh man, I don't know.
Right.
See, I had this like goblin, this little goblin man that was selling like talismans, and it was just an elaborate like Jackie Chan Adventures joke that I was trying to build. I never actually expected them to try and buy. Also, I never expected them to talk to the goblins. There was a lot of things that I just did not. I was not prepared for to happen in this. It's like, yeah, there's a goblin village, but you're not really interested in that. You're gonna move on. No, we're gonna stop and talk to every one of these guys.
Right.
Where is the most bitter and ugly old goblin woman so I can shout random obscenities at her? What? You want a what? Yeah, just like I'd like stick my head out of the moonroof. There's no moonroof. You're in the back of a cart. It's just wide open. Like people can see you. Yeah, I stick my head out.
Yep, that was me, by the way.
I know.
I do want to point out that Connor is usually the sort of voice of reason in our campaign.
Yeah.
And I think Connor expected me to sort of be that voice of reason.
I really did.
But then I decided I was going to play a chaotic good bard. So,
Although Dom of Wicked Gaming has started to kind of fall into that position of the voice of reason, and I'm like, oh, thank God. That there's at least one.
because he's the other guy who's behind a screen.
And knows that, like, man, this is going to suck.
Right. So after playing my loot for, I would imagine, 10, 12 hours and earning enough dead rats to get this talisman, we finally do listen to the NPC go into these sewer tunnels where another Warforged, made of wood this time. The first one was steel.
Yeah, and this one's made of wood, and, like, the wood is, like, still alive. It's got, like, twigs and leaves and stuff growing off of it.
Really cool mental image we were given. And a rat man. I don't really understand what's going on with the rat man.
He's going to turn out to be a shifter when you guys talk to him next
Okay.
week. Not to spoil it too much, but he was a rat shifter.
We did do non-lethal damage to him so we could talk to him. So this rat-looking shifter guy, I don't know anything about shifters. I'm sure my character does because he is trained in knowledge history and knowledge nature. And they were trying to break in. We had gotten the key off of our patron's body, if you will. And they were trying to break in to these secret vaults. These are the secret vaults of Tone Starkenstone.
That's right, Tone Starkenstone, the who we talked about in the first podcast.
We talked about him in both of the podcasts.
and we cut it from both of them.
And they were both cut for time. So this is the time.
So Tone Starkenstone is our... I should back up a little bit. A while back, we had a one-shot adventure where we were going to just fight the strongest enemies from the Pathfinder bestiaries. And we had built characters specifically for that. Like, it was almost like an Avengers, like we're sitting in a tower. Hey, the Tarrasque showed up, and we just jump right into the fight. You know,
Right, that is...
no story, no going from town to town. Just everyone build a level 20 character. We're just gonna fight a Tarrasque. We're gonna fight Cthulhu. We're gonna fight a Cloud Titan, whatever it is.
Right.
And away we go. And the character I built was Tone Starkenstone. And it's a dwarven Tony Stark, and he had construct armor. And it was like a level 20 wizard. No, he was a level 19 wizard with one level in fighter. And his arcane focus was the Starkenstone, which of course play on words on the Arkenstone, the Arc Reactor. And then in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years later...
Oh yes, this happened hundreds of years before even the last campaign.
Yeah, even the campaign before last.
Hundreds of years before the one we're doing now.
Right, so like thousands of years ago, like this took place in our game world, and... Then the last campaign we did, they found the Starkenstone, and so that's what kind of like led into this like new level of high technology. Is we found Tony Starkenstone's stuff, so now we can start having like clockwork guns and things like that in the world, and that's where the Eberron stuff kind of like swept in and like made sense for it to be there because suddenly the wonders of the Age of the Dwarves are back in the world. They're trying to like break into one of the secret vaults of Tone Starkenstone, and you guys don't actually even know what you're after yet. You have an idea.
We were told that it's a 7-pointed star, part of this creation disc.
She's after a 7-pointed star. You guys, you found some other information in the journal for the brief time that you had it, and you couldn't quite speak Ancient Dwarven, but you were able to get enough that you got some indication there's something else in this vault. But you'll find out about all that a little later.
What's in the vault that I care about is gold and cool stories to tell on my loot.
Woo!
There was also this very interesting pipe thing, if you want to tell... in the sewers.
Yeah. Actually, and that's all my invention. Like I use the Eberron campaign setting from 3.5. It has the beginning part of an adventure in the back of it, and I was using the. I'm adapting a lot of like that storyline to kind of, because it was like perfect. I was trying to create this whole like, how am I going to do the Tone Starkenstone, like we're going after his artifacts, and then once I was like reading through these Eberron books I had, I was like, oh, they like already have a story that does this exactly. So I'm just going to take a bunch of what they already have and I'm going to space it out across the campaign and also adapt it for our purposes. So I'm not going to take credit for Keith Baker's making this awesome like pipe puzzle. It's not even really a puzzle. It's just like this. So there's this long hallway in a sewer with all these valves in the walls, and like the valves have an initiative. And so like while you're fighting in this room, all of a sudden one of the valves will just open out and water starts rushing through.
It wasn't random. I saw you rolling and metagamed a little bit. It was random which pipe would go when.
It was not random. It
Okay.
was a dice roll. It was a D12. Was determining which one was going off.
Sounds pretty random to me.
Oh, okay.
But it wasn't just you picked it.
No, it was. It had 2 points in an initiative because there were so
Yeah.
many of you, and I thought that it didn't make sense that like it like went off once.
Yeah.
Also, I figured if it went off once, like if you guys blew through this encounter, then you'd never notice that this was even going on.
Right.
So it had 2 points in initiative, and then whenever its point came, or whenever its turn came, I should say, I would roll a d12, and that would tell me which one went off. And I was kind of like scribbling on my sheet, kind of trying to keep track of where you guys were,
Right.
because I told you how long the hallway was, and I knew what your
Right.
land speed was, so I knew roughly where you were. And your character, unfortunately, was standing right in front of
One of the valves.
One of the valves when it went off.
I was standing in front of valve number 7 when you rolled that 7 or whatever.
Yeah.
And almost died because it was my turn in initiative like next, and I was down past 0 hit points and rolled a critical fail, getting that out of the way early.
You almost died, and it was pretty rough.
Right, if I had taken any more damage, that would have been death for me. Luckily, our Dwarven Cleric is a traditional heal bot Dwarven Cleric.
Just like ran over, I was like, time to heal.
Yes, here you go. 8 hit points.
The Warforged Life Cleric would actually be a heal bot.
Oh, these puns are killing me.
Hey, how about that?
And then we had the key. We were about to go in the thing, and it was called for time.
Yep.
Because we're adults with bedtimes.
Yeah.
Because we have work in the morning. So not a lot actually happened in the adventure. It was mostly just building this new world that we found ourselves
Yeah,
in.
and actually, like, you guys asked a lot of questions that, like, I had expected to address much later.
Mm-hmm.
Like the College of Sorrows thing, like, was just meant to be something in passing.
Yeah.
And then you guys went, who's in charge of that? What? Who's in charge of it? Okay.
Who's like the dean?
Hold on. Let me open up my phone and get to the document where I was keeping track of what all the stuff was going to be in this adventure. Because going back to that session 0 podcast we were talking about, like, make sure you write everything down. I wanted to make sure that I have as much of the big world stuff written down before I went into this, just in case, for example, someone just shouted out, who's in charge of, like, the big enemy corporation there? God damn it. Alright, hold on, let me look at it. It's, this guy is... And there was also a lot of fan service that I threw in there from
the old campaigns.
from the old campaigns.
Well, talking about the old campaigns and making stuff up on the spot, the first adventure they were in, when our entire group got put together, the one before you showed up for in Pathfinder, it ended up with this like tournament-style public combat to determine who the new high priest of Torog was going to be. So I need to come up with like 14 dwarven names real quick. This is like Jeff Pickhammer, Hammer Flint Steel, Cole Rock and Roll, and the last one I came up with when I was completely drained was, and Frank Forge Frank, who stayed with you guys for 2 entire campaigns as the High Priest of Torog. So as I was saying, not a lot sort of happened because we were world building, right? Because even though we know the names of the cities that we are playing in,
it's been 800 years since
It's
last
been
time
800
we played.
years.
And I've given you guys a little bit on the Facebook group. Like Mikey
Right.
had this big question as a result of his, I think it was his background.
yeah, his bond flawed.
Yeah, his
thing.
whatever it is, because we're playing 5th edition. And he's like, there's a question that, like...
I think he rolled, I am obsessed with the question in an envelope from a long dead colleague who something could never find the answer
Yeah,
to.
so, like, I like, was racking my brain, like, trying to come up with a question that you couldn't just, like, look up and figure out. So, like, I had to create something attached to lore. And we actually touched on this a little bit at in the Session 0 podcast. So that meant I had to build all this lore. Then once I had it, was like, all right, cool. So there's going to be this question. I was like, but here's the problem. There's an 800-year gap between the last time these guys played in this world and when they're playing in it now. I can't just say, hey, if only I knew who these people were. He's not going to have any idea what the hell I'm talking about. So it's like, all right.
Right.
What is reasonable for them to just know from having gone to school or living in this world and understanding, like, references in the world that they live in? So I had to, like, preface it with this, like, 3-paragraph thing of, this happened, like, 200 years ago, and it's, like, totally common knowledge. There's, like, songs and shit about it. This is stuff that your character would just know.
Songs, you say?
You're the bard, man. Make it happen.
Working on it.
You've got all the information about it. And then here's the question. And so what the whole thing is that, like, there's supposed to have been, like, this war that happened, like, 200, almost 300 years ago, and it lasted for a long time. And the weird thing is that even though it's like, it's almost like the World War II of our world had happened, and for some reason, everyone just doesn't seem to know who Hitler is. Like, there was a Fuhrer, but, like, imagine if there was a Fuhrer in World War II, but no one knew his identity. And it's weird that, like, no one even addresses that question.
Because it can't be something that, I've trained in intelligence history. If I crit on the question that he has on his envelope,
Exactly.
I still can't get.
Right.
It
So
needs
it
to be
needed
something completely lost to history.
Exactly. It had to be, like, this big mystery that, like, nobody knew. And so there's a character from the last campaign who became a lich, and he was one of the player characters. He became a lich. So it's like, he's still alive in the world, and so the last anyone knows about it is someone went to just ask the guy who was alive at the time and go, hey, who was it? And that's the last anyone's heard of anybody about the whole thing. So maybe you guys will get into that. Maybe you won't. I don't know.
I do want to talk a little bit about Mikey is playing a mystic.
That's right.
And he did amazing things with that because I had never seen that class before.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen a little bit, but it's definitely not in 5e. Like, it's from the Unearthed Arcana. Like, I didn't know what he was going to do with it, but like I've said before, Mikey's got a great imagination.
Yeah.
And I'm just really excited to see the stuff he does with it. And then I kind of felt bad because he was coming up with, can I just do this? It's like they're in like this long hallway and they hear these voices and he goes, so there's these two guys in here. We can hear that there's two guys. Yeah, so I can perceive these two guys. So since I can perceive them, I can attack them. So I'm going to attack the first guy. Okay, so you reach out in your mind and you only sense that there's one person in this hallway. And so part of me is like, man, I hope he comes to the conclusion that there's like one guy talking to himself. But no, he immediately, because you guys just fought a Warforged like an hour ago, was like, there's another robot in this hallway. Mm-hmm. So that's going to be like a thing that comes up a fair amount of time. Because that's, like, I wanted to make sure that Warforged come up, not all the time. You're not going to be fighting them every adventure.
Because can I just say, we were in initiative twice, and we fought a Warforged twice.
Well, there's a reason for that you'll find out the next time you play.
Hey, if this was a robot-themed adventure, that would have been fine by me.
But now he knows that, his psychic power, there's an entire race of beings that his powers just don't work on. And he needs to think of other creative ways of getting around that. But the stuff he was doing with can I, like, put a thought into the mind of the captain of the police and, like, have him, and I'm like, I mean,
roll the dice. Let's
see. Roll the dice. I mean, that's actually not outside the rules of what you can do. So let's see if that works, and...
Right, because... The difference between talking to someone and saying to them and trying to get them to think that they're thinking that inherently is just a deception check. Mm-hmm. That's how I'd rule it. Right. And that's how you did rule it.
Yep.
So I think that worked out really well. Had a lot of fun. Can't wait till next week to see what's behind this great door. That's all we got for Tales from the Table, right?
I think so.
So, Connor...
It's funny because we actually went up talking about like 2 other campaigns. Right. Like just as much as we talked about the actual... thing we played last night.
Right, but there was a lot of world building there,
yep.
So explaining some of that world. And Connor, officially...
The worst part is that people are probably listening to this thing going, like, man, you keep talking about this world, we wish you would, like, do a live game and, like, make us a part of that world. Because, like, it's one thing for us to talk about, it's another thing for, like, people to, like, to involve people in that world. But maybe someday in the future. Like, comment, subscribe, and tell us how much you want us to do a live game, as opposed to just talk about our adventures in the podcast.
The second ad is always the Patreon plug.
That's true.
And so going into that Patreon Facebook group is probably the easiest way to get a hold of us and let us know that, maybe we'll be doing a patron hangout. Who knows? It's all about how many people we can get there and if we can make it worth it for you guys. Because if there's just 3 of you, that doesn't sound as fun as if there were a big hangout where we could all talk.
Right on.
So here's that almost certainly Patreon ad, and we will get back to you with our main topic. Yes, as promised, this ad is indeed for Patreon. As I'm sure you know by now, Patreon is a voluntary subscription service where wonderful internet people, such as yourself, can directly support the content creators who make the stuff that make you smile. But we're not just asking for donations. We know some of you out there are chaotic good. We want to add value to becoming a patron for Gemhammer and Sons. And the more patrons we have, the cooler things we can do with our patrons. So if you want to see all the cool stuff we're currently doing and help us do cooler stuff in the future, go to patreon.com/gemhammer to find out more. Thank you, wonderful sponsor, which is almost certainly
Us.
So today's main topic, unconventional class options in 5th edition.
That's right. I think a big complaint that a lot of people have with D&D 5, or D&D Next, or 5th edition as it is commonly called, is that there aren't as many options as there are in, like, say, Pathfinder, or 3rd edition, or
Right. If I were
edition,
playing,
which, to be perfectly honest, is entirely too many options. But that's a topic for another
if I were
time.
running in 3.5 and I wanted to play a rogue, I could give him the acrobatic feat, and I could give him, all these things about jumping and hiding and flipping and what have you, and then he'd be completely different from your skulk in the shadows and stab someone from behind. Whereas in 3.5, you really have assassin, arcane trickster, and thief.
That's right. I feel that a lot of the kind of the charm of D&D 5 is that you can have these same options. You can have this, like, different character, and while it's not necessarily going to feel so different because it's like, oh, well, I have these very unique abilities, it's all about how you look at it. And I think a great example is, I was talking, this is actually like a little bit weird, kind of an unrelated thing that kind of figures into this. I was talking to Dan Dillon from the Tone Show on the Facebook group for 5th edition, and I was talking about how, like, Beastmasters...
The Tone Show, the podcast, whose link is in the video description.
Absolutely. And they're really great. He's a really good guy. He's smart. He brought up a lot of good points I had never thought about. Since 5th edition came out and I read the Player's Handbook, I've said Beastmaster is underpowered. Everyone that talks about it says so. You should check out their podcast. I think it's like 121 or something about Beastmasters. And he goes into all the reasons why it's not underpowered and why it's great. And I'm not going to, like, sit here and reiterate all the things he said because, like, I'm not stealing his thunder. But you should go check him out. Beastmaster's great, and he's completely convinced me of that. And I was like the first person that would jump up and say, this is dumb, and I can't believe they did this. But now that I've looked at it and seen how great it can be, I've kind of, like, what can I do with that? What are some great character concepts? And I think that's a big thing is that people overlook, is that, like, there aren't prestige classes anymore. Well, I guess now, because Rune Master is in the...
There are very few prestige classes.
There's that one prestige class. Like, because of the options you have in here, you seem limited, but really it's, like, as limited as your imagination. And the two examples that we had come up with off mic?
Sure.
Off mic. Was the Beastmaster as a lion tamer, and then the Bard as a jester. And this is straight fluff, and this is relating a little back to the last podcast we did, where there's nothing about these classes that doesn't also perfectly fit in with this. Like, being a ranger with a whip and a shield that just, I happen to say, is shaped like a chair, and having a handlebar mustache and a top hat, and Nala, sit! And my Beastmaster is, it's a wolf, but I'm saying it's a lion.
And it works perfectly with the new backgrounds that are in 5e that don't exist in previous editions.
That's right.
Because now you have the entertainer background as opposed to, say, Outlander or Sage or something else that a ranger might take. So why did he get to be in such cahoots with this oddly lion-shaped wolf? Well, because they work together in the circus.
Exactly.
Where also the bard, who's the jester, works there too. Exactly. Who, instead of doing songs or what have you, is juggling and telling jokes and limericks and riddles and what have you.
Yeah, and there are a couple things that are specifically, your bard's song. It's like a limerick can be a song. Like a jester can sing songs, just like it doesn't have to be a funny, like, juggling guy. So, I mean, you can take the criminal background or you can take the entertainer background, and both of those really work well. And that's true of just bard in general. But now, like, you can kind of change it up as, like, am I playing like a court jester with the entertainer background, or am I playing almost like a gypsy, like, street performer Jester. Like, and they're two very different things. But it's all flavor text. It
Right.
still works with the core rulebook right in there at 5th edition. You're not going to Unearthed Arcana. You're not going into Homebrew. It's just, I want to play a Jester. Well, there is the Unearthed Arcana Jester now, which is pretty cool, and I think they should put it in the main game, but they haven't yet. So, until then, just call your Bard a Jester.
Right, and bards, I think, are probably the best places where flavor can really grow. And I just want to take a look at some of the musical instruments that they could have access to. Because Bard
That's not even getting into all the other musical instruments that's in Sword Coast Adventures.
Right, this is just the musical instruments listed in the PHB, right? Because when you build a bard, it says you have a lute or another musical instrument. And here's what we got. We have bagpipes. And I can tell you that Gregory, who is a very traditional half-elven lute-playing bard, is way different than Sad Rag McFladbag.
Cad McFab Plaidbag. You've seen it written down, so help me God.
So Sad Sack McFladback was a bagpipe-wielding, dwarven, very Scottish-flavored
That's right.
kind of guy who played completely different, had a different disposition.
I found a Thunderstruck on bagpipes on YouTube, and like that was for every song he did was Thunderstruck on the bagpipes.
Then we have Drum. I know Dom from Wicked Good Gaming DMs a game where he has a half-orc sort of banging on the drum, sort of tribal kind of thing going on.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, which I think is pretty banana sandwiches. It's really interesting, and that puts a whole different thing to your inspiration, right? Now no longer are you just being inspired by sort of the magic, but you're getting really pumped up to swing your sword really hard.
And it's like a different kind of inspiration. It's like one is like I'm singing a song about how great you are, and the other one's like, almost like a chanting tribal, like
Then we have
mosh pit.
Then we
So
have
brutal.
Then we have dulcimer, which appears to be some sort of lute, stringed instrument, which is identical. Flute, I thought the idea of sort of being a fife and drum corps, kind of, think the Patriot marching into battle.
See, I was always thinking about like a Pied Piper kind of situation with a flute. You take a lot of like control spells and like mind control and like psychic spells and stuff like that.
Yeah. But then we've got, lyre. You've got like a harpy thing, which is somehow different than an actual harp. Actually, harp isn't on here, so maybe my proficiency in harp is really a proficiency in lyre.
Yeah, whatever.
Which is good because I don't have proficiency in deception, so I'm going to have to lie some way with my lyre. Oh, man.
Man, that is a History of the World Part 1 joke.
Actually, did you see...
Bring me a small lyre. I didn't do it, I wasn't there. Not that kind of lyre.
Did you see the dad jokes DM
I did.
table on Reddit? Link in the show notes. Hilarious. Just all the greatest terrible D&D puns and more available to you right there on the Reddit. We've got a horn and a shawm, which is a medieval or Renaissance wind instrument, forerunner of the oboe.
Oh, fancy.
That I'm definitely not reading right off Google as we talk. And the horn, those kind of have the same thing. Though, as a horn, you could be more like a bugler. That sounds really interesting to me. The sort of no-nonsense soldier background bugler is way different than the hanging out at the bar, sitting on a bar stool, playing a lyre to a...
You could be the bugle boy of Company B.
You could be. Of B Company, our old side quest group. That would have been funny. Pan flute, the idea of this gnome floating around casting magic spells with a pan flute, flittering and being somehow even more ridiculous and crazy than I traditionally expect
Gnomes
bards to be.
Oh, bards to be?
Bards and gnomes sort of combined. Best of both worlds, frankly, if you want to play a gnome bard. And then a viol, which I'm going to guess is a violin of some variety.
I would imagine.
European violin that's old. I wonder how big this is, like for, compared to like this is like much bigger than like a violin. This is like guitar sized, but it's still bowed. But hey, now you're like Jimmy Page bowing on a guitar.
Yeah.
Which is way different, which is a different kind of person than would play a lute or would play a lyre or be playing big tribal drums. Your characterization isn't affected, isn't controlled by what class you are.
Yeah.
Is essentially where this is coming from.
And that was a big thing, and I think it's kind of the core of this topic is that everyone's probably going to be like, well, this is just fluff again. No, it's not fluff again. Well, it is a little, it's fluff but almost like precision fluff. You know, because the thing is that I had a guy saying, "Oh, I really want to play a samurai, but samurais aren't in the game." What is so different about a samurai? Like, imagine a samurai in medieval times, and imagine a knight in medieval times. What is so fundamentally different about them?
Right.
Like, anything that you say that's fundamentally different about a knight and a samurai is flavor text. Well, one's got a greatsword, and one's got, katana. It's like, okay, so they both got two-handed, large swords
Yep, that do slashing
that
damage.
do slashing damage.
In fact, in Pathfinder, samurai is treated as an alternate version of the cavalier class,
Yeah.
as opposed to being its own class.
Which is weird, because cavaliers, like, ride animals and stuff.
So did the samurai, primarily, like in actual history.
Oh, alright.
But ninja was in very much the same way, just a reskinned rogue.
Yeah.
But they also had monk key, which was really cool.
And now it's, in 5th edition, it's just like a subset of monk.
Right.
Which, I mean, and you could multi-class rogue and monk to kind of get that same ninja. You don't need ninja to be its own thing. You've got everything already there.
Right. And it's all about campaign settings, right? We've
Yeah.
always had sort of an Eastern Oriental theme in a part of our world. My brawler grew up as a monk that we played before your time. But he's been popping in and out of existence. Well, we will have a long conversation about Nikki Lemonfist.
We will have an entire podcast devoted to Nikki Lemonfist.
We will.
But we'll do that at a later date. Because,
Some other time.
Because that's going to come up in the adventure you guys are playing now.
Really, very excited about that. Clerics, I think, are the sort of next thing to talk about. Because barbarians are real easy, I think, to reskin, to reflavor. Because there are the sort of outlander barbarians who this is their way of life. There are sort of the regular folk barbarian who
See, I love the idea of
uses their rage.
Someone's like, I want to play a werewolf. It's like, rather than actually giving them lycanthropy, have them be a barbarian. Have them start taking levels in barbarian. And now they're wolfing out. And, now they're turning into a werewolf for a little while, and they're going nuts.
The idea of playing a halfling barbarian has always appealed to me. I know it's mechanically not great, but this idea of sort of a sheepish little halfling who doesn't want to rage, who only rages, who feels like they lose themselves when they're raging.
Bruce Banner the Hulk.
Right. A very Bruce Banner situation. Bruce Banner, a barbarian. And then we have cleric, and of course, with all the different gods, you can find exactly the right god for exactly the kind of person you want to play.
We were playing a D&D game, but we were using the Pathfinder gods because we had started playing this in Pathfinder. And so we're using the Pathfinder gods. So he's all about Nivi Rambadazzle, who's like this gnome god of...
And this was Trickery Domain, right?
Yeah. And this gnome god of gambling and stuff. And it's like, I very much... I was playing a cleric, but it's very much playing a rogue.
Right. When it comes to druids, there are 1,000 different ways, and it's all biomes, right? If you want to be from the desert druid or from the jungle, the idea of a beach druid is really interesting to me. Someone who grew up sort of on a hut by the seashore.
Unless you're a moon druid, in which case, it's not about where you're from. It's all about, turning into animals and stuff.
Right. The other circle, I don't actually know much about it. There's the moon, and then there's the land, which is all sort of
the stuff you were just talking about.
Right. But the idea of sort of this seashore hermit walking down the beach, throwing crabs back into the ocean when the tide comes in, or I guess when the tide comes out, is because that's when crabs get left there, is really interesting to me. And I would, if I could live 100 lifetimes, that is a character I would eventually play. Coming next is fighter, and with those fighting styles, or why you're fighting, completely different, right? The acolyte who the gods don't favor, who's gone, well, if I can't cast spells, I might as well swing a hammer, is way different from the soldier who was sort of, trained from a young age to kill and fight and keep their weapons sharp.
And I've heard a complaint with this argument, and it's, oh, well, yeah, but they're their abilities are so different, and it's rolling the dice for one, just feels different than the other one. Doesn't really. Does rolling this D10 for the damage that this weapon does feel absolutely so much different one to the other? It feels different because you believe it feels different.
Right. And
rolling that same D10 across these two identical fighting classes that just have some flavor texts and some minor ability changes is not really different. You just feel like it's different because someone's told you that, oh, this is what a ninja is. Oh, this is what a rogue is.
And you can feel that way without having big mechanical changes.
Exactly.
Monk is anyone who would do unarmed damage.
Yeah.
You know,
But you don't need a brawler. Monk already exists.
right. You could be a boxer who does unarmed strikes. You know,
Yeah.
I know our Warforged in our group has a monk weapon, and I think it's really cool. I don't know if this was the case in Pathfinder, that you can use a monk weapon and then unarmed strike, even at first level, is awesome to me. This idea of he comes down with a glaive and then comes around and swings and hits back is way different than how, Mikey had played a monk before.
Yeah, where he was just punching and kicking stuff.
Or how my brawler had played.
Right.
Right? Mikey was very much more focused on acrobatics.
Yeah, he was like flipping through the air and then like kicking them from the sky. And,
Yeah.
and your guy just like walked into the middle of the room and just punched things till they died.
Yes. Paladin is exactly the same as we just said for
A
their
big
clerics.
part, honestly, about this is they're different because you make them different. They're not different because of the mechanics. Because when push comes to shove, you get a fighting man.
Yeah, you have a magic user, you have a fighting man, and then you have everyone who's in between.
Yeah. And that's just the truth of this game. And like, if you don't think that's true, well, then you need to go back and look at the history of this and really look at this. It's like, you tell me that, like, I mean, Druid started off as a subset of cleric.
Right.
And they're both divine spellcasters. They both have a lot of the same abilities. Like, they're not that different. And even when you get into, like, when they would start to develop prestige classes, and you go to, like, the Thaumaturgist, who's, like, summoning all these, like, outsiders to come to you, and you got the druid that's summoning all these animals. It's like, okay, you've just built two nearly identical prestige classes.
Right.
You could have just built the summoner prestige class. And now that I'm saying this is probably a summoner prestige class that I'm totally missing.
There's a summoner advanced class in Pathfinder,
There you go.
which is a little different. They do have the summoning thing, but they generally have one. It's called an Eidolon, this outsider that is we're good friends with.
a lot like the Thaumaturgist.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, you are either making your opponents do saving throws or you're rolling attack dice.
Yeah.
Right? At the end of the day, you are looking at a piece of paper and rolling a die and adding numbers together. What makes it feel different is the way you play your character.
And how you feel
Right.
like when you play that character.
It is fundamentally role playing, or else you're all just being fighting man and wizard.
And
right?
rolling dice to see who does the most damage at what level. And if you want to play that game, cool, more power to you.
Yeah, that's not the game I would like to play, except maybe during Grapple Mania. I do like the idea of, can I min-max better than everyone else? Sort of
And I have
competitive.
learned my lesson that I do not go into Grapple Mania with a druid and a... Well, actually, the druid was fine. It was the cleric, two clerics, I should say, and a bard, because you're not going to have a good time.
Yeah, the wind cleric didn't do well in the professional wrestling particularly well. And the other cleric was your trickery guy, right? That we were just talking about?
Wind cleric?
Don't you have a Tempest cleric? Wasn't that
No,
one?
he's not a Tempest cleric. He's a nature cleric.
Oh, we're talking about Arturo Caramandius.
Yeah, Aquaman.
yeah.
He's actually a nature cleric. So
I
that he
just
can talk to
realized
animals.
you built two different characters, one who was Tony Stark and one who was Aquaman.
Absolutely.
And then when I'm describing this sort of halfling who becomes a barbarian, you're like, oh yeah, it's just like Bruce Banner.
Yep. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Well, it's not broke, and we don't intend to fix it. I actually want to give a little homework.
Okay.
Are you good with that?
Yeah, sure. Homework.
You've seen
Teacher, you didn't give us homework.
Stranger Things, right?
I have seen Stranger Things.
I haven't, and astute listeners will remember that was the case 3 weeks ago when we started this. I want our main topic next week to be Stranger Things.
Really?
Yeah, I would like to give myself a reason to binge watch it,
Okay.
and then you and I can talk about it when we record. So when our listeners hear this when it's uploaded on Friday, they'll be all set for that.
Sounds good.
So this is your wonderful internet people. You got a little homework. If you have Netflix, go watch Stranger Things. If this is the far distant future, find a DVD.
And I want to give a little homework too.
Okay.
Since we're talking about it, I would like, the people that read this or listen to it, read it. Because print media is dead. I would like the wonderful internet people out there that listen to this on Apple, iTunes, or on YouTube, or wherever it is you're listening from, just to kind of like shoot us a comment on our Twitter or on the YouTube page or wherever you're finding this, and just tell me how you would reskin a character. Like, I'm saying, I've got this Beastmaster, and I'd make it a Lion Tamer, and like how I'd do that. Give me an example. How would you do it? Like, and even if you completely disagree with me.
Can we make a contest?
Actually, yeah. Let's do that.
So we'll do 3 weeks after This goes up for the first time because people asynchronously listen to podcasts.
That's true.
Whoever has the best reskin of a character that has gotten to us somehow on the internet.
Well, best reskin of a class.
Yes, my apologies. Best reskin of a class somehow got to us on the internet.
For 5th edition.
Yep.
D&D 5th edition, best reskin of a class. Whoever's got us the best one in 3 weeks, what are they getting?
Cure Wounds Light t-shirt.
Cure Wounds Light t-shirt.
Tastes great, less healing.
Tastes great, less healing.
So that's one homework and a contest. So the homework is make sure you watch Stranger Things because there isn't going to be no prohibition on spoilers next week when we talk about it on the podcast. And a little contest. See who can come up with the best reskinned class in 5e. And the winner's going home with a Cure Wounds Light t-shirt.
Sounds great. I love it.
Excellent. So that's what you guys have to listen to. The show notes will have when it uploaded and the date that the deadline is. So, distant future people, I apologize. But remember, you can still almost certainly pick up a shirt at gemhammer.squarespace.com.
Yeah, I don't see us stopping selling these, even though we haven't sold any. Oh, no, that's not true. We sold some at the con.
We did. So, thank you, wonderful internet people. Make sure you do your homework. And if you want a t-shirt, you know what to do.